The following program is sponsored by Retirement Renegade. Are you ready to take control of your financial future? Andrew Winnett of Retirement Renegade has the strategies you need to plan for a successful retirement. Whether you're planning for your retirement, saving to live out your dreams, or looking to grow your wealth, Andrew has resources to guide you every step of the way. Andrew Winnett is the Retirement Renegade, and he's been developing customized plans to help you achieve your financial goals. Retirement Renegade starts right now.
Welcome to Retirement Renegade. I'm Danielle Martin. Today, you'll learn cutting-edge financial strategies and tips on earning income for life in retirement. And joining me right now is Andrew Winnett. He's the founder of Retirement Renegade, where they're fighting for your financial security. I'm here with the rebel with the cause himself, Andrew. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
I'm super excited for today's show because we're going to dive into what your firm is about, why your firm is so special and different. So what makes your firm so special? Because I know you have a special story for us today.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
Well, it all started July 1st, 2009. It was unfortunately the worst day of my entire life. It was the day that I got a phone call from my younger sister of 5 years, and she uttered the words I'll never forget as long as I live, "I think Dad's dead." And you got to understand, Danielle, when I heard those words, I immediately went into a panic. What do you mean Dad's dead? My dad was only 45 at the time. He wasn't traveling. He didn't have a chronic illness. You know, how can Dad be dead? And I remember as I closed up everything at the local bank that I was working at, I jumped in my green Toyota Camry, and I made the normally 20-minute drive from Roseville, California to Auburn, California, where I had grown up and where my parents had resided at the time. And I remember trying to get home and thinking like, oh my gosh, what am I about to walk into here? You know, what if my dad wasn't all the way gone? You know, what if I had a couple minutes with him? What if he was passing? What would I say, you know, if I just had a minute or two left with my father? I mean, it's hard to think about. Like, what would you say? You know, it's like, those are tough questions to answer. Right. I started thinking about, like, you know, we had gone fishing a couple weeks before for Father's Day and had a great time. And, you know, a couple miles down the road, then I start thinking, okay, well, if my father truly is gone, what is my mom and my younger brother and younger sister going to do? You know, my mom hadn't worked in 20 years. Well, she did work. She raised us three hellions. She just didn't get a paycheck for it. But what is she going to do? What's my younger brother and younger sister going to do? They're still living at the house. I knew I'd be okay. I'm, you know, married, out on my own, climbing the corporate ladder. I've got my own place. I'll be good. But what about my family? I remember getting into Vintage Oaks, that subdivision that I had grown up in, and I blew through the last stop sign trying to get home, and I made a right onto Vintage Way, this crazy steep hill that I had gone down so many times as a kid on my roller skates and my bike. And I remember cresting over the top of the hill and seeing out into the distance at the end of the cul-de-sac where I had grown up, all these flashing lights. And fires, you know, fire trucks, sheriff's vehicles, paramedical teams. I run through, you know, I park my car, I jump out of the car, jump over the bushes, run through the already open front door. And as soon as I got into the front door, Danielle, I was greeted by all of these uniforms. And they all had their heads down and they wouldn't look me in the eye because they knew what was coming. And I remember as I ran through the house and I ran through the already open back door, seeing off into the distance, sitting at our outdoor patio set, was the paramedical team who worked on my father. And they too had their heads down and they wouldn't look me in the eye because they knew what was coming. And I remember as I saw my father there on a stretcher, and needless to say, he was gone. And I'm not going to get into the details of what happened, you know, and how he got there or whatever, because I'll start bawling like a baby. And you didn't, you know, they didn't come here to see that. But the point is that from that day onward, Danielle, we spent the next couple months picking up the pieces as a family. And it was extremely difficult on all of us. Well, as we were going through and as we were figuring out, okay, what is going to happen? We come to find out my dad did leave my mom some life insurance money, right? Now, it was by no means millions of dollars. We wish it was. But we didn't really quite know what to do with it. My mom was kind of a little bit perplexed because she's like, well, I can take this money and pay off my $400,000 mortgage in California and have nothing for my future, or I can live on it and basically have this massive mortgage payment and still, run out of money and not have anything for my future. She gets this phone call from a friend at church, says, you need to go talk to this financial advisor. And she goes down and sits with this financial advisor. And I mean to tell you, Danielle, something happened that changed the trajectory of her life, my life, and thousands of others. We're going to talk about that on the next segment.
Yeah, Andrew, I do want to say that I appreciate you sharing this story. I know it's not easy. I know many people have questions about this. Losing a loved one is very difficult, but knowing that you've experienced this, I know you and your team have strategies and plans in place for retirees. So we're going to continue the story coming up. And later in Retirement Renegade round, Andrew talks about the greatest financial advisor in history. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
How does your future look in retirement? When you don't have a strategy, the future might look a little fuzzy. But with someone asking the right questions and helping you learn where you truly stand, it can become easier to work towards your goals. You need a strategy to help generate income that will last as long as you need it. And the first step to creating an income strategy is an analysis of where you are now. Let us help you bring your retirement into focus with your free income analysis today.
When it comes to planning for the future, time may not always be on your side. Think about your taxes. Tax rates are historically low right now, but they'll likely be higher in the future. Our current tax rates are set to expire in just a few short years. With the right planning and strategy, you might be able to cut your tax bill in the years to come. But don't wait until it's too late to take advantage of today's lower tax rates. Let us be your partner in planning for tomorrow so you can enjoy your retirement today.
Welcome back into the show. I'm here with Andrew Winnett. He's the founder of Retirement Renegade right here in Nashville. We've been talking about Andrew's family and how you've been navigating this loss with your father. Let's dive back into that. I know there's a second part of this story. So what happens next?
Yeah. So going back, 2009, my mom got that phone call and at the recommendation of her accountant, they recommended that she go sit down with this financial advisor who went to her church. And of course, my mom's like, okay, she's super stressed out at this time. She doesn't know what to do with this money. And keep in mind, this is right after the global financial crisis. I'm sure, many of our listeners remember losing 40% of their money during that on average.
Right.
Unemployment was double digits. It was a tough time for folks. Danielle, I was actually part of the problem, which is, kind of tough for me to say, but I was working at Wells Fargo at the time, and I was the guy saying, oh, dude, and we said dude a lot in California. It just means friend. But, oh, dude, you got to invest in this stock. This stock is going to go to the moon, and I'm getting my friends to invest and my family and all this stuff. And when the global financial crisis hit, we didn't lose 40%. We lost everything. That stock went to zero. And I had the pain and the shame of having to look my friends and family in the eyes and say, I'm so sorry I was wrong. Well, again, right after this time, my mom goes to this financial advisor, and this financial advisor did what financial advisors do, runs this little risk-analyze test, right? And she basically said, okay, we're going to see how much of a risk tolerance you have, and runs this whole test. Oh my gosh, Suzanne, you have a very low risk tolerance. You should only be in 14% equities and the rest in fixed income and bonds. And my mom's like, that went right over her head. Yeah. Okay, I have no idea what that means, but I trust you. You're from my church. Okay, let's go for it. Gives the money over to this financial advisor, and she invested it in the market. Well, fast forward a little bit. I would frequently go and see my mom because I was not living in the same area. So I'd check in on her and see how my mom and brother and sister were doing. And keep in mind, during this transition period of losing my father, my mom figured I need to go back to work because I got to provide for my younger son and younger daughter who are still living at the house. I invested this money in the market. I can't live on it. So she's trying to find a job. And it was super tough during that time. Unemployment was double digits, right? It was brutal. She gets a job, doing the only thing that she really had a good skill set in, working at a sew and vac place for minimum wage because she was really good at sewing.
Right.
So she's working at this sew and vac place for $9 an hour, and that's not cutting it. So she discovers, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll get a relevant degree, because if I can get a relevant degree, I'll make more money and be able to provide. So after full-time work at minimum wage at the sew and vac place, she then has to go back to night school and try to get a relevant degree. She's got all these plates spinning. It is super difficult. It's not working. She ends up having to have my grandma move in and help make the payments. It was a super tough time. Well, I'm over at my mom's house, having dinner with her, checking in on her. And I get this little thought in the back of my head. Call it a premonition, call it the Holy Spirit, whatever, right? And I said, Mom, I want to see your statement. I want to see, what you're invested in and how you're doing. And she goes and gets her statements, and I'm flipping through it. And I mean to tell you, Danielle, much to my shock, much to my chagrin, I discover that every single penny that my mom had earned in interest that quarter was completely wiped out by advisor fees. And when I saw this, Danielle, I about hit the roof. I'm like, no one messes with my mom. This is unacceptable. Now, I don't know if you knew this, Danielle, but I come from a Jewish background. Now, that's by ethnicity, not by practice. I believe in Jesus. I know it's hard to tell because of my abnormally small nose. But in that culture, right, the eldest son, which is me, is responsible for taking care of mom if something happens to Pops. And that's exactly what happened. And so I felt very responsible. This is my mom. Nobody's going to take advantage of my mom. So that frustration, that righteous indignation, it set me on a path. I had to discover alternatives. There simply had to be a better way. How can we participate in market upside without any market downside? How are we able to get the guidance without the fees? How are we able to acquire long-term care insurance for 25 or 50% of what it otherwise costs to do a standalone long-term care policy? How are we going to get my mom to retire years earlier than she initially thought? How are we going to have her income increase every year to help offset inflation? There just had to be answers out there. Now, I didn't learn about it from the Wall Street marketing machine at Wells Fargo. I didn't hear about this stuff. And that journey was the best thing that ever happened to me, the best thing that happened to my mom. And God has redeemed something as terrible as losing my father. And now many people have been helped because I found the answers. I found those things, and I'm on a righteous crusade to educate the world that there is a better way to retire. Again, we're trying to make retirement great again. And I found those answers.
Andrew, I appreciate you sharing your story, and your passion is I'm feeling your energy.
Good.
And so I know a lot of people have questions about this. Navigating loss is not easy. And so you see the perspective of having a powerful ending and knowing that, hey, I'm going to do something about this. And so I appreciate you sharing that. If you have questions about this, don't hesitate to reach out. But straight ahead, Andrew tells us about the greatest financial advisor in history in the Renegade round. And still to come, Andrew answers some of your questions. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
Planning for retirement can be complicated. Helping create income that lasts, making sure your health care is covered, and don't forget about taxes. If you're overwhelmed, you're not alone. The good news is we have what you need to give you confidence to start planning for your ideal retirement, all in one convenient resource. You'll get answers to some of your biggest retirement questions in this easy-to-understand, practical resource. And best of all, there's no cost to you. Take the first step toward a confident retirement and get yours today.
In today's Retirement Renegade round, Andrew talks about the greatest financial advisor of all time. Andrew?
Thanks, Danielle. Right now, I want to discuss the greatest financial advisor to ever live. Who do you think it was? In my opinion, I believe that the greatest financial advisor to ever live was Joseph in the Bible. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the old adage, if it's new, it's not true, and if it's true, it's not new. This is 3,500-year-old wisdom that has stood the test of time. In fact, when I was reading through the book of Genesis, I was so impacted by the strategies that Joseph implemented to save not just Egypt, but the known world, that I decided I'm going to build my entire firm off of those 5 strategies. And if you haven't figured out what we're trying to get into your hands in our Retirement Renegade library, I want to highlight my very first book that I wrote, which is called The Joseph Strategy. And in this is a 5-step game plan to achieve the retirement of your dreams in any economic climate. Joseph was the greatest financial advisor to ever live, but he had a couple strategies that we built our firm on and that I want to highlight to you right now. Okay, so if we look at the first strategy, which happens to be the first meeting at our office, the first strategy was management, right? Joseph was a wonderful manager. There's that old saying, what can be measured can be managed. And so what we do on that first meeting is we measure or take inventory of where are you at? Where do you want to go? What are your guys' goals, your dreams, your desires, your concerns, and your objectives in retirement? This first meeting takes anywhere between 40 minutes and an hour and 15 minutes, depending upon how much fun we are having. The second strategy is the second meeting, which is financial wisdom, right? Financial wisdom. Now, God gave financial wisdom divinely to Joseph on how to prepare for an upcoming season of famine. Now, I believe it doesn't matter who you are. We all go through seasons of abundance, and we all go through seasons of famine. Some seasons of famine are what I would classify as involuntary. There are things that happen to you, curveballs in life that you aren't quite prepared for. I'll give you a couple examples. How about this one? Fluffy gets sick and it's a $10,000 vet bill. Or the heating and air unit explodes and you got to buy a new one. Or the roof blows away in the next tornado, right? It doesn't matter what it is, long-term care event, premature death of a spouse. We all go through seasons of famine that are involuntary. Then there's seasons of famine that are voluntary. We make conscious decisions that have an impact on our finances, good or bad. A couple examples might be choosing to retire. The paycheck goes away. Another one, not doing anything about taxes. 0 strategies. Did you know that taxes are on sale over the next couple years? Now's the time to get a strategy. Bottom line is God gave Joseph financial wisdom divinely on how to prepare for an upcoming season of famine. Stanford research recently came out and said the average lifespan by 2050 is going to be 100 years. So imagine the season of abundance being 40 years. This is your working years. And then the season of famine, your retirement, potentially being 40 more years. Do you have a strategy in place to get you through that famine? The third one, which is the silo strategy. And the silo strategy we'll talk about later, but the silo strategy is where we implement our entire process. Now here's the cool part. The first meeting takes about 40 minutes to an hour. We're just gathering where you're at, where you want to go. The second meeting, what we're doing is we're running a tax report. So you can see, do I have any areas that I can slim down the taxes? I don't want to be tipping the IRS. We're going to look at taxes, number one, and then we're going to create an income plan. This income plan This is going to go through every sort of curveball you can possibly imagine in retirement. In fact, it's going to factor in Social Security getting cut by a third. It's going to factor in a very high inflation rate, which is probably going to happen. It's going to factor in kind of the worst case scenarios. We hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. We are not exceedingly optimistic like most advisors are to the client's detriment. Then we're going to show you what our recommendations are on that second meeting. Now, even if you're like, Andrew, this is amazing. I'm so excited. I had no idea that I could have a plan that would guarantee I would never run out of money and I don't have to pay all these fees and I can participate in market upside without the downside. Where do I sign? Let's do this. This is an answer to prayer. Even if you're in that situation, which many of our clients find themselves in on that second meeting, we don't move any money on that second meeting. We just don't have enough time. The third meeting is designed, now that you know what our recommendations are, to answer any questions, and then we can start that process of becoming a client. Now, for what we do, the 3-meeting process, most financial advisors, they're going to charge anywhere between $2,500, okay, to $3,500, whether you become a client or not. I don't like to do that. I think it's better to give than to receive. We got to do it within reason because we've got employees and clients we got to take care of. But we do 3 meetings for free, and then you're for sure going to know, okay, this makes a ton of sense. I want to move forward. It's checking off all the boxes for our family, or I never want to see this crazy guy again, and then we can part as friends. But the point is we give everybody 3 meetings for free, and we follow the Joseph strategy of the greatest financial advisor who ever lived to ensure you never run out of money in retirement.
Thanks, Andrew. A lot of great insights right there. And still to come, we'll hear directly from you in our Q&A section, so stay with us. We'll be right back.
When it comes to your car, your health, even your fashion sense, a second opinion can make a lot of sense. The same can be true for your retirement. Don't let unanswered questions keep you from getting the most out of this next stage of life. You deserve to feel confident. Help keep the doubt at bay. Find out if you're ready to retire or if you need to make a change. Our team can help. Contact us for your second opinion today.
Well, welcome back into the show. It's time to get to some of your questions that you have for Andrew today. Are you ready to get started?
I'm ready.
Okay, let's do it. So first question comes from John in Nashville. He says, I'm 65 and considering a life insurance policy to help replace my pension income in case my wife outlives me by several years. Is it unusual for someone to be buying life insurance at my age?
No, it's not unusual. I will say that it is better to do it sooner than later. It's like that old adage, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time to plant a tree is today.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. None of us are getting any younger. And so you're going to want to do that sooner than later. It's really important also, based upon your age, that you've got an independent brokerage who can shop through all the different companies to ensure you're getting the best rate. Because let me tell you something, with life insurance, the rates can vary wildly. We're talking 100% differences. So with one person, maybe it's $2,000 a year, the next person it's $4,000, or maybe depending on how much coverage you want, it's $4,000 a year versus $8,000 a year. That's a big difference. So you need to come to an expert like us, Retirement Renegade. We can shop it for you, and we can make sure that your wife is going to get the most bang for her buck.
That's what we like to hear. Awesome. Okay, let's get to our next question from Donald in Franklin. He says, is there a helpful way to figure out how much income I'll need in retirement? I thought I knew exactly how much money we spend every month, but now that I've started crunching the numbers, it appears I was way off. I think many of us feel this way. We're like, oh gosh, I spent a lot of money.
Yes, Donald, you are not alone. I ask people when we do their income plans, like, how much do you think you're spending on, all of your monthly bills, mortgage, food, gas, insurance, utilities, gifts or donations, fund money or travel. And they'll always say, oh, probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9 grand a month or something. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to give you some homework for next time, because it always ends up being more. You know, people don't realize how much they spend until they actually take inventory, and then they're like, holy cow, we're spending way too much, you know? And that's okay, that's fine. But if you're going to create an income plan, you got to be accurate. Because the last thing that you want to do is shoot from the hip thinking, oh, you know, I think I'm spending 8 or 9 grand a month, and then, you know, you anticipate spending 8 or 9 grand, and then all of a sudden you're running out of money in your 80s, and you're having to go back to work, you know, standing on your feet for 8 hours a day at Dairy Queen. That is not the ideal retirement, right? So if you need help with an income plan, we are the best of the best when it comes to creating what we call the bulletproof retirement income plan, because we factor in all the worst case scenarios, all the what ifs, the curveballs, Social Security getting cut by a third, an inflation rate of 4 to 5% every year for the rest of your lives. We factor in long-term care. We factor in, you know, what if there's a premature death of a spouse? We factor in the worst case scenario so that you know for certain that I will be okay, even if all these terrible things happen, I'm still good. And then hopefully they don't happen. And if they don't, it's rivers of gravy in retirement. It's just going to be that much better.
Andrew, you said it's the bulletproof income plan that you guys have. I like the sound of that.
You like
because
that?
If you look at my expenses, it might be a little scary. So I might need your help.
I can help you, Danielle.
Okay, our next question comes from Bill in Spring Hill. He says that I've had about 90% of my assets in cash for the last 3 years. I know this is way too much to have in cash, but I'm too nervous to do anything else with it. Where do I begin to start looking for some conservative options?
Yes, that's a great question, and you're not alone. You know, with rates being what they've been, you're getting, hopefully, I hope you're getting a decent rate of return, 4 or 5%, you know, on your money. But if you are not, you need to call us immediately. It really comes down to what is the purpose of the money, right? So is the purpose of that money for safety? Is it for income? Is it for growth? Or is it for long-term care / estate planning? If the purpose is for income and retirement, and maybe it's like, well, I'm not retired yet, I wanted to grow safely, followed by income, this is where we shine. Come find, you know, someone like us, Retirement Renegade. We can show you those conservative options that will, they're the last domino to fall in an Armageddon scenario.
Andrew, I know a lot of people have questions about retirement. So as he said, you and your team, you've been doing this for nearly 20 years, so you don't want to hesitate to call. Andrew has the answers. Now here's how you can connect with Andrew and his team and learn more about all the great resources that they have to offer to help you achieve the retirement that you've been dreaming about and that you deserve. So for Andrew Winnett and the team at Retirement Renegade, I'm Danielle Martin. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
The preceding program was sponsored by Retirement Renegade.